MAPS Starter. So in my last video, I reviewed MAPS Anabolic, which is more or less the flagship product of Mind Pump. So going into this review, there's a couple of questions that I think need to be answered to differentiate MAPS Starter versus MAPS Anabolic, especially given that MAPS Anabolic is more or less marketed as a beginner program itself. Who is MAPS Starter for? And therefore, why would you choose one versus the other? Now, to answer the first of these questions, it is very much intended for beginners. And by this, I mean total beginners. If you have never done any structured exercise before, and especially if you have current limitations on your movement, this is who the program seems to be intended for. And even more specifically, beginners who do not have access to equipment like barbells, benches, cables, and machines. So I can see the appeal for someone who is not looking to get a gym membership. Maybe they don't feel comfortable going to a gym, don't have access to a gym, or don't want to invest in the equipment in their own space just yet to have a home gym. Stick around to the end of the video because I'm going to give you my own ideal version of a starter program like this, and I'm going to give it to you for free. So I always start these videos with a final score, and this one I'm going to give a 5.5 out of 10. That probably comes across as pretty harsh, especially considering the more favorable review I gave to Anabolic. I've got my own biases in here, but I think this program, it carves itself into way too tight of a niche. It is marketing itself as a generalized beginner program, but I do think that it limits itself a bit to a point where if you are able-bodied and don't have any specific difficulties with performing most of the main types of movement you would see in Anabolic, you should just do Anabolic instead. However, if you are someone for whom you're not quite there yet, maybe you are dealing with a disability or chronic pain or obesity, Starter is there to give you an avenue to start developing your movement skill. I think there's something to it. I don't agree with all of the choices it makes to accomplish this, and I'm going to go into that starting now. For effectiveness, I give it 1 out of 2. Again, it's a slight downgrade from the review I gave to Anabolic. I actually really do like a lot of the movement selections that they have made here. If folks have a bit more difficulty, for example, squatting to depth. The physio ball squat leaning against the wall, I think is a really great alternative to get people used to reaching for the ground with their butt. A lot of folks I know do struggle, at least at first, with getting all the way down there, just standing on their own 2 feet. So that's a really solid suggestion to make something accessible to people. And they do a lot of that in this program. The things that I'm a little less sure about are choices like why everything is done on the physio ball. Why are you doing presses and rows seated on a physio ball? A lot of these movements would probably benefit from having a stable surface to work on. Structurally, we are also alternating between foundational movements, like foundational workouts, and tension workouts. The tension workouts are similar, except they're generally programmed as AMRAP to fatigue, so where you think your form is about to break down, and then you do a 45-second hold in the hardest position in the movement, either the stretched one, such as in a fly, or in the contracted position, like in a glute bridge. So basically, doing isometrics after fatiguing yourself by doing the thing for reps. It's an interesting idea. I can't really comment on the effectiveness of it though. In fact, I'm not even entirely sure what the objective is. There's no written explanation, there's no video explanation. I basically have to speculate, unfortunately. And at the very least, I have to assess, based on what the program tells me it's for, is this going to contribute to that or not? The other thing that they actually include in MAPS Starter that is not present in Anabolic are warm-ups, specifically what they call priming movements that you do at the beginning of every single workout. It's the same 3. It's 2 stretches and like a wall press. They describe priming as
like a warm-up, except far more effective.
Whether or not you think that these 3 movements are part of a traditional warm-up, I see them in traditional warm-ups all the time. I don't really know what the distinction in their mind is between this versus priming, apart from the fact that priming gets to sound like something they're offering that's unique. It's not that important. Basically, they just give you a set warm-up to prepare for the movements that you're going to do. You can take them or leave them. I don't think they're that important, but if you have difficulty with certain aspects of your mobility, they can be nice. Also, why is the lady in the demo videos limiting her range of motion on the shoulder press? The male is clearly going through full range of motion. In fact, I would love to see his dumbbells actually touch his shoulders, but they're pretty close, and he's got the elbows tucked in to give him a little bit more mobility there. What gives? The other choice that I find genuinely strange is that, like I said before, the physio ball is just used for everything that you would ordinarily use a bench or even a steady chair for. The program provides zero info as to why this is the case, apart from saying you only need a physio ball and dumbbells. Now, a ball is cheaper and easier to store than a bench. Heck, you can just deflate it between uses and tuck it away somewhere. I have to assume that the use of the ball is very deliberate. They think it is giving you something unique. And the thing that it gives you that is unique is that it wobbles. Girl, wobble it, and I'ma gobble it. Training on a wobbly surface requires more engagement from your stabilizer muscles. And for a lot of personal trainers, that is a huge plus. And I have seen a lot of trainers really rely on the physio ball to make exercises more difficult, often citing that it is building core stability. That sounds plausible, but also doing loaded movements in a freestanding manner also requires core stability, and it develops core stability. Or you can do movements that only do core stability. But what happens when you train on a wobbly surface, apart from the activation of all of these stabilizing muscles, is the deactivation of the prime movers. Let me explain. On a wobbly surface, you don't have the option of lifting as much weight as you do on a stable surface. I hope that's pretty self-evident. And also, let's look at what the purpose of the program is again. It's to prepare you for more traditional training going forward. It is meant, at least in part, as a prelude to doing probably other MAPS programs like Anabolic or Performance or whatever. So in those future programs, are you expecting to lift on a wobbly surface? No, you're not. The physio ball makes no appearance in Anabolic whatsoever. So there's really no logical reason to start on a different surface than you plan on using going forward, especially since what you're doing by limiting the loads you can move is you are also limiting the stimulus to the muscles that are being used. So you are sacrificing potential strength and muscle gains for the purpose of building some idea of stability that won't actually be applied to your future training or your daily life activities or any sports you're probably going to participate in. There are definitely a lot of exercises where the physio ball is appropriately used, such as rollouts or those physio ball squats. But if you are going to run this program, I would highly suggest doing anything that feels like the ball isn't supposed to be moving anyway, on a bench or the floor or freestanding. On usability, I give it 1.5 out of 2. The FAQ section, the tracking sheet, like all of that is identical to what you would see in Anabolic and what I expect you would see in all of their programming. So feel free to watch that video if you want to hear my thoughts about it. Once again, you just get a printable sheet for logging. I don't think that's a problem necessarily. If you don't have easy access to a printer, you can always use a notebook or a notes app on your phone. It's not really a deal breaker for me. For some reason, I didn't notice if this was the case in Anabolic, but the male and female demo videos have different music. I'm going to play both side by side, and I'm going to let you decide for yourself what the implications are. See if you can pick up on the subtle differences. On flexibility, I'm giving it a 0.5 point out of 2. Surprisingly, the flexibility that I praised in MAPS Anabolic is nowhere to be found here. To a degree, that is understandable, and I don't want my criticism to just come across as I wish there were more choices. After all, there is no need for regression exercises since you've already regressed the exercises as far as they can realistically go. But there are some choices that feel odd. For example, MAPS Anabolic is designed with 2 times a week, maybe 3 if you're advanced. MAPS Starter is 4 times a week. As written, One thing that I do like is that the workouts are shorter than Anabolic. It's usually 5 to 6 exercises that you're doing for 2 sets each. So it makes the fact that you're doing more overall sessions in the week a little more manageable, but there are no substitutions. There's no alternative to the calendar. If this isn't a perfect fit for you, then you're on your own making adjustments. For example, there may just be things that are too easy for you. Like if just getting up from a kneeling position and coming to standing is relatively easy for you, even as a beginner, you don't really have a way of scaling it up. It doesn't give you an idea of how you could load it externally if you were going to do something like that. So you're just kind of doing something that is for its own sake and kind of boring, but that's what's in the program. On enjoyability, I will be a little more generous. I will give it a 1.5 out of 2, but I'm going to put in all the asterisks that exist on the entire planet. If you are brand new to structured exercise, I can see the potential that this program will be very empowering for you. If things like age, disability, or body weight make it difficult for you, or even just daunting to try something like Anabolic, and that includes just the idea that going to a gym is socially something that makes you incredibly uncomfortable, I have nothing but respect for that. I know that it can be intimidating. Giving you the tools to build up a movement vocabulary in a way that feels doable, where nothing really feels like it's out of your reach. So the opposite of AX1, for example. I think that is a very good thing to offer people. The tension sessions are a neat idea. I can see someone really enjoying the burn feeling that you get out of taking an exercise to fatigue and then holding that hard position for 45 seconds. But if you don't enjoy that feeling, you're gonna hate half of the workouts for the entire program. And that's too bad, because I don't necessarily think that those tension sessions really serve an important enough purpose to be this front and center for the entire 12 weeks. And finally, on value, 1 out of 2. I want to be fair in my scoring here, because a lot of the things that gave Anabolic value are also giving this value. It is a well laid out program. The demo videos are good. The blueprint is simple and gives you exactly what you need. The reason I score it just slightly lower is because of how niche it makes itself, and as a result, how unrepeatable I would suggest it probably is for most people. Anabolic, you could just kind of do it on repeat for a while, and you would probably see gains, especially because of its phasic structure. You would probably continue to see improvement if you just kept doing it over and over and over again for a year even. Starter, you kind of have to leave behind at some point. And lastly, the other thing that holds it back for me is some of the points I brought up earlier in the video regarding the fact that a lot of the things that it focuses on are not really that useful and won't be applicable to you in the future. But what if we took the core concept of this program? We made it a little more flexible, a little more scalable, and a little more focused on actually guiding nervous newbies towards becoming competent trainees in a home gym or a public gym setting. Well, I wrote one. Strength for All is a program that is intended to introduce lifting to anybody who is struggling with movement and exercise due to things like pain or body weight or disability. Every exercise slot has a drop-down menu. The exercises are presented from most regressed to most progressed. So you start with the one that is achievable for you right now. You can just treat your first workout as a little bit of an assessment. Just start with the easiest one, and then over time, you can progress to the more complex or more difficult variations. You can just keep duplicating the tab over and over again, block 1, block 2, block 3, and make this program last as long as it needs to get you confident and comfortable. And you're scaling each movement type individually. It requires minimal equipment, and you can use the link in the program to email me directly, and I will do my best to answer you. You'll find a link to the program in the doobly-doo. If you have programs that you would like me to review, please let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Now go get friggin' strong.